Hello everyone and welcome to today's Friday with Vistage webinar. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some items to help you participate in today's webinar. If you're experiencing technical difficulties joining the webinar session, please dial support at 1-888-259-8414. When you join today's webinar, you selected to join either by phone call or computer audio. If for any reason you'd like to change your selections, you can do so by accessing your audio pane in your control panel. During the presentation, all participants will be in listen-only mode. You will have the opportunity to submit questions to today's presenters by typing your questions into the questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. Please note that a PDF of today's presentation is available for download on your control panel, and a recording of this presentation will be sent to you via email within the next week. And now, I'd like to introduce the moderator for today's webinar, Bill Black.
Welcome to Fridays with Vistage. My name is Bill Black. I'm a Vistage member and your moderator for today's webinar. Our title today is Help Wanted. New report outlines how to find and develop talent. You know, mid-sized companies generate 60% of new jobs and employ about 1/3 of U.S. private sector workers. Yet these firms consistently report difficulties with talent management, including recruiting, hiring, and retention. Through surveys, focus groups, interviews, and case studies, the Brookings Institution and the National Center for the Middle Market have identified sources of these problems and outlined potential solutions. Our speaker today will provide an overview of key findings in the report and offer specific and actionable recommendations on how you can improve your own talent management approaches. Our speaker today is Kathleen Quinn Votaw. She's the CEO of TalenTrust, which is revolutionizing how companies find, keep, and grow the best people. After decades of earning accolades in the staffing industry, Kathleen determined that traditional models don't always serve the best interest of clients, and she vowed to disrupt the stagnant recruiting industry. In 2003, Kathleen launched TalenTrust to act as a strategic partner in helping companies solve the people puzzle. As a longtime Vistage member, Kathleen attributes much of her firm's 300% revenue growth over the past 3 years to participation in the Vistage community. She's a speaker and author of a book titled Solve the People Puzzle: How High-Growth Companies Attract and Retain Top Talent. TalenTrust serves companies across the United States and was listed as an Inc. 5000 fastest growing company in 2015 and 2016. Ladies and gentlemen, Kathleen Quinn Votaw.
Thank you very much, Bill, for that lovely introduction, and welcome all of you to Fridays with Vistage. We enjoy delivering our content to you through this venue, and I hope you enjoy the content today. I will warn you, get your pens and papers out because this is meaty content for you to make notes and implement in your companies. I just wanted to join you and welcome you via webcam. I'm going to turn off my webcam now, and so we can focus on all the content. So as Bill mentioned earlier, we have great news for you. There is a new national report out from the National Center for Middle Market, which, by the way, is what most Vistage member companies fall into. Let me define the middle market for you a little bit. It's companies between 10 million and 1 billion, and they're broken out into small, core, and large. So this particular report I am giddy about. It focuses on things that we've been telling our clients for years, that there's specific strategies, processes, and systems that you need to implement in your companies to get ahead of the war for talent and really strengthen your companies. And I'm going to focus on 5 specific recommendations today that the report highlights as well. I'm going to give you some strategies and make sure that you have some tangible takeaways. Rest assured, at the end of this webinar, you will be able to receive the full report, the full PowerPoint deck, and some other goodies that you will want to bring back to your companies as knowledge sharing for you to attack this issue once and for all. So middle market companies, as Bill had mentioned, really are key drivers of our economy. We create more jobs than any other sector. So pat yourselves on the back. The research shows that our companies provide about 1/3 of the private sector jobs and account for more than 60% of all job creation, which we hear talked about in the news quite a bit. Payroll growth is up over 3.7% over the last 5+ years. And we have a lot of positive numbers. We're really, really important. But unfortunately, we face pretty significant hurdles in finding and keeping people and the talent you need to grow. You know, the baby boomers, who we love, are ready to retire, or as I say, they're going into their encore. And the talent pool is shrinking. It really is an inventory problem, people. Almost 4 in 10 middle market companies are reporting through Vistage surveys and other surveys that we track that unfortunately their growth is restricted because of the lack of talent. And 44% can't find candidates with the skills they need. Our friends in manufacturing and construction specifically have such challenges when it comes to finding people with the skills they need. And you know, these challenges are just so critical up and down the employment ladder. So there's some specific areas of weakness I'm going to focus on. And again, I'm going to give you 5 key takeaways today to overcome these weaknesses that were outlined on the report. It plagues middle market companies, unfortunately, that there's no brand awareness. Unfortunately, nobody knows who you are. They can't find you. And you need to start, as one of our graphics illustrated, shouting from the rooftops who you are and what you can do for employees and how to attract them through your front door. Unfortunately, another area of weakness is that, you know, human resources is very lean in most middle market companies and transactional versus strategic, because a lot is dumped on them, let's be honest. And we have to get much more strategic there. There's also a lack of understanding what opportunities people want. What do employees want who join you, and actually building strategies to train people and a succession plan for key positions. Because we also know from a lot of our clients that the more mature workforce and their exit strategy poses a unique challenge to middle market companies. And unfortunately, there's limited opportunities and fewer resources than larger companies have. And I'm going to give you some strategies on how to band together to overcome that weakness in particular. So I told you I'd have some good news. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer on our webinar today, because today I want you to walk away with, you know, at least 3 key takeaways. And here's what I'm going to outline for you. There's good news. I mean, you as middle market companies can really appeal to employees differently than other companies can. One of the top 5 things employees want from their jobs is a sense of purpose. And you can offer that to them in a very meaningful way with meaningful work, and you can do it more directly than larger corporations can because you have a more intimate environment. So write that down as a key thing for employees, that they want a sense of purpose. And how are you going to create that for them in your organization? I'll give you some tricks and tips along the way here. So the first area I'm going to focus on is one of those weaknesses. Let's elevate human resources, right? Let's get strategic about HR. Let's move them beyond administrative and tactical into a strategic role. Bolster your internal HR staff through partnerships with appropriate outside resources. I think sometimes we set HR up in our organizations. They have to do payroll, they have to do benefits, they have to do employee engagement. Now, by the way, make sure that every single person in this organization is aligned with our culture, aligned with our values, and operating at 100% capacity to drive our profit, our gross margin, and our revenues. I think that's a big job. So let's give them a strategic seat at the table. Listen to them. Many are very smart people, but they're stuck in getting things done. Allow them to be more vulnerable and ask for help. It's okay for the HR function to ask for help and bring in outside advisors to make them stronger. They have a very big job, and it's often misunderstood and undervalued. And if we can elevate HR and get it more strategic, get them the tools and partners they need to be successful, you'll have more success in your organization. So that's point number one. I also want to point out to you a wonderful research from Bersin in benchmarking your talent acquisition organization. Bersin came up with 4 levels of maturity regarding talent acquisition. And you can see the graphic here on the screen. One of our first steps with our clients is what we call at TalenTrust a people puzzle gap analysis. It's really foundational, and it sets the overall strategy for our clients of what they're going to do with their culture, their people, and their talent. It's really a roadmap for success. And we use Bersin's research to give our clients a score. So if you would for a minute, take a moment and be honest with yourself and look at these 4 levels. Level 0 is reactive tactical recruiting. Number 2 is standardized operational recruiting, which means you've got some processes and systems, but not much. Then 4 is fully integrated, and then 3 is fully integrated, and 4 is optimal. Like they are the Googles of the world, the GEs of the world, the Marriotts of the world. And I suggest, and some of our clients have scored a level 0, which I won't make you sad today. I won't tell you what that is. But write down for yourself on a piece of paper where you would grade, just emotionally, where your company is on this continuum. And then we help our clients build tools and processes to get to the next stage. I conducted a webinar called Conducting a Gap Analysis that you might want to reference, that goes through in detail how to perhaps do that on your own and really understand the pieces of the puzzle in a gap analysis and where to start. So you can reference Fridays with Vistage for that webinar. Number 2, and this is my favorite of everything we talk about at TalenTrust, establish a recruitment process that is based in sales and marketing. The recruitment process is often delegated to this administrative task, and we really come into it in a crisis management situation. Wouldn't it be great if we elevated our recruitment processes and talent acquisition strategies to a well thought out, well executed, thoughtful 5-stage process that we could depend on so we make better business decisions in our companies? I'm thinking you're all saying yes. So let me go through these steps. First is lead generation, which means filling the top of the pipeline and getting employees that you want to work for you interested in your brand. So we're going to talk about brand awareness a little bit later in the webinar. Second step is candidate engagement. Candidate engagement is about pulling those leads into a conversation with the company and actually getting them to pick their head up and focus on your brand, what you do, how you do it, why you do it, and really starting to tell them who you are. Now note, this graphic represents it takes 8 to 12 touches to move someone into engagement. So it takes patience, which many of us as entrepreneurs have 0 of. So I'm just making that note to you. Then third is candidate screening and assessments, interviews, and then making the final offer. I spend an awful lot of time on this particular strategy with in our workshops that I conduct for Vistage chairs and their member groups. And we spend a whole hour and a half on this particular strategy. But this can at least inform you of the stages involved, and also moving beyond what we call in our organization posting and praying. And unfortunately, when we engage with many of our clients, this is their strategy. They post positions to multiple different job boards, websites, Indeed, Craigslist, Career Builder, LinkedIn. It goes on and on and on, right? And they pray that the right people are just going to show up. Well, I submit to you people, that's not a strategy. That is a tactic, and you have to do it. So if you're not at least doing that, write that down. You at least need to do it. However, it is not a strategy, because this particular tactic, posting and praying, only focuses on 30% of the population who will respond to an ad. It doesn't focus on the 70% of the population that is actively working for somebody else, focused on their jobs, and happy. Let me give you a couple examples. We work with several engineering firms throughout the country, Minneapolis, Colorado, and the East Coast. And their strategy when we first engaged with them was posting and praying. So we built a system for them, much like I just demonstrated in recruitment as a sales process, and started engaging with engineers all over the country that had the skills that they were looking for. Now, not all of them are going to be a good cultural fit. I'll touch on that as well. But at least we started engaging in dialogue with these candidates ahead of time, so they were aware of these companies and the opportunities that it could afford these potential employees. So it really starts engaging a population that you more than likely have never talked to before, and those are the 70% that you want to have in your organization. Simon Sinek, who many of us as Vistage members are very much aware of, says you don't hire for skill, you hire for attitude. And he's right. You hire for attitude, and then you inspire people. You want to inspire them to do greatness for your brand. You cannot teach attitude and culture and values. So focusing on people who you want to work with you is a great first step. So here's some key outcomes of strategic recruitment. You're going to build a pipeline of qualified candidates, much like you do with your qualified prospects and your clients. You're going to have choice versus crisis when you need to fulfill jobs. And you're going to boost awareness for your company, which leads me to my third topic in this conversation today, leveraging your employment brand. Remember I said in the beginning of the conversation that nobody knows who you are. They can't find you. They don't know what you stand for. They don't know what you represent. They don't know what your purpose is. They don't know what your goals are. You'll likely spend a lot of time and money, energy, and effort on building your brand for your customers. But you likely don't spend a lot of time, energy, effort, and money building your employment brand. And that's how potential applicants, candidates see you in the marketplace. So it's time, people, to really focus time, energy, and effort on building a brand for your employees. And I'm going to tell you how at a very high level today. Your employment brand is your market's perception of how they're going to experience your company, right? A strong brand is how people interact with each other. It's how they experience you, your customers, your vendors, your employees, and how they experience each other, and how you position that to the world. The good news here, and write this down, is you can repurpose the content, much of the content you use for customer attraction, for this particular initiative. You don't have to reinvent yourself and your employment brand, because many of your brand promises to your customers are your brand promises to your employees. They should be very well aligned. It's not a tagline, it's a philosophy. And it's a framework that's built around relationships between your organization and your employees. And it's what your employees are talking to other employees about, other employees and other applicants. So strong brands, some strong brands that come to mind are Google, GE, Marriott, Nordstrom, right? We all know those brands. Chick-fil-A is another one. They have a very strong brand. What's your employment brand? What do people say about your organization? How do they talk about the company to people inside the company and outside the company, right? Key is your employment brand must be very honest, because we live in a world that everything is very transparent. So don't think you're going to say one thing about your brand in marketing and then Glassdoor isn't going to inform the world of what your real brand is and how people are experiencing. So it's very important that you make sure that you're honest. And this is very hard work, people. It is not it's not something that you are going to just wake up one day after your Vistage meeting on Thursday, depending on my Vistage meetings on Wednesdays. So Thursdays, I always come back all fired up to do something differently. This is a long-term commitment, and you have to commit to it and commit to the brand long-term. The benefits are it strengthens your organization. You'll get more candidates. You'll get passive candidates who are looking for your values. It'll improve acceptance rates, and it goes on and on. Here's a couple first steps to building a process around employment branding. These are employment branding steps. This is a very in-depth topic, so I can give you the highlights today. And if you remember, I said you're going to get the full report, the National Center for Middle Market report, and you're going to get all these slides, so don't worry. You can take this with you. Step one is really assessing and improving your culture. Find out where you are, and you have to ask your employees. It's online research, understanding who they are, understanding what people are thinking about you. There's all kinds of tools that you can use to accomplish step one. TalenTrust happens to like the Q12 and Net Promoter Score, and we can answer any questions about that in our Q&A. And then promote your brand. Introduce your HR people to your marketing people, right? I'm sure most of you have brilliant marketing people who write messaging and branding. I know we do at TalenTrust. And introduce them together, bring them together. What's the message? Why do people want to join you? What's the message on social media? Leverage technology. Remember, we live in a world right now where people want to be engaged via pictures and images. Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat have all created this really quick yet pictorial connection with people. So how are you leveraging that? This is a great area to engage your more emerging workers that some of you might call millennials. They really can help you step out and step into the light and get your brand out there in front of people. Encourage your team to become brand ambassadors. Think of the one person in your organization who would absolutely throw themselves in front of a bus to make sure that people knew how great it was to work for your company. Who's that person in your organization? Write that down and get them involved in this discussion. And please have an employee referral program, because your people who work for you should be shouting from the rooftops to come work for your company. If not, you've got a problem. And if your referral program devalues people by paying more for one function and less for another, I'll give you a really good tip to change tomorrow. Don't do that. Because why is one person referral more valuable to an organization and culture than another? So again, I could have a whole Fridays with Vistage webinar on employment branding, but they're not going to give me that much time. Number 4, let's adjust our candidate filters, right? When you're evaluating candidates, you're looking at attitude, aptitude, and culture fit. Remember what I said Simon Sinek said? You hire for culture and values, and you can train a skill. You don't want to just focus on the technical skills. Enlarge your candidate pool by removing unnecessary filters. We have found quite a bit that some of our clients get so rigid in their filters that they can't even find somebody to interview. And keyword searches on resumes are going to be limiting for you. My friend Jack Daly and I go around about this often, and we both agree. Jack Daly is a great speaker in the Vistage circuit and beyond, but we both agree, does it really cost you a lot of money to have a 10, 15-minute conversation with a candidate to see if they might be a good cultural fit? Maybe they might be the right person or a game changer. So you can use some assessments. I'm going to talk about that and behavioral interview questions to help you in this regard as well. So my son is a baseball player, and when he was very little, and I'm not an athlete, anybody who knows me would giggle at this, any ball, I would throw back and forth with him. I mean, I would just roll it, I'd throw it, I'd roll it, I'd throw it. Hours and hours of entertainment, right? And it became foundational for him as he became a baseball player and a hockey player and a golfer, by the way. But I would never have sent him out to his first little league, tryout game without throwing the ball back and forth, as imperfect as I am as a coach. But we are sending our hiring managers out there to interview people, and they have no idea how to conduct the conversation. They have no training. They come into an interview, and they probably prepare maybe 2 minutes, maybe 5 minutes is the statistic. They don't know what questions to ask, and most importantly, they don't know what answers they're looking for. They're making emotional decisions, and these hires equate to, in most cases, $40,000 investments annually, $60,000 investment annually, hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases. And we are not, as employers, giving them any skills or any tools to have the conversation. Now, any coach would tell you, you got to practice to be perfect. So when it comes to recruitment and selection, you need to train your hiring managers in assessments and behavioral interviewing that are essential, and give them the confidence to make some great hiring decisions. The good news is there's tools that are created for you. We use assessments with our clients, and there's a whole suite of assessments. You've got to really figure out which one fits you and your culture, but they're very reliable. Make sure you choose one that is a selection tool, and you don't want to only use it for selection, but if your first step is selection, then make sure it's a selection tool. And they're very reliable to establish benchmarks. And the first way to use it is take your best and brightest and figure out what good looks like in your organization, right? Measure it. Once you measure it, you will actually know what you're looking for, and so will your hiring managers. This data from assessments can be used when you choose candidates. It can also be used when you coach employees on what they're doing well in an organization and what they're not doing well. Let me give you an example. We use in our organization an assessment tool called Profile XT, and it measures thinking style, behavioral traits, and top interests. Now, there's a joke in my company that I move at a pace much higher than most human beings in the universe. And you know what? They're right, because on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the top 2% in the universe, I move at a pace that is much, much more aggressive than most human beings. So as a business owner, if I don't understand my own pace and how it compares to my employees, I can leave roadkill and not even know what happened. I can overcome some of the employees in my organization and not even know that I have left them dazed and confused behind me. And that could be very dangerous to culture, values, and tensions. Just because you're moving at a fast pace doesn't necessarily mean you don't value the people you're interacting with. So that's just one self-disclosed example of how this tool can work. And I'll show you. This is how Profile XT is engineered. You can see that this is just a demonstration. The thinking style shows you, can the person do the job, right? And it's verbal and numeric skills. Then the behavioral trait shows you how the person will show up and how they will do the job, right? And then the third piece is their top interests. Will they do the job? Because let's all agree, people tend to do great work when they like what they do. So I was just talking to you about my energy level, and if you can see in behavioral traits in the middle of the screen, it's on a scale of 1 to 10. Well, think of this as a bell curve. And so it doesn't matter whether you get a 1 or a 10, it just is what it is. And you have to build respect into your company and culture to understand that if I'm a 10 on pace, but I'm working with somebody who's a 5 or 6, I have to understand to bring myself closer to their pace and slow down. I try to do that on these webinars as well. So hopefully I'm doing a good job for you today. Behavioral interviews, I touched on a little bit. They require a lot of training. And many of our clients invest in this for our part of our services, because if we bring our clients great candidates, but they don't know how to interview them, answer the question yourself, it's going to be a unfortunate situation. Just like if you bring a great sales lead into a bad sales process, things just won't go the way you anticipate them to. But building great KPIs, what does good look like in our company, great cultural questions, getting some qualitative and quantitative information. You can see illustrated here on the screen, there's a panel. So people are kind of engaging with the different, really the different generations in an organization and how people are responding. So really do yourself a favor and invest in behavioral-based interview training for your hiring managers, and you'll see your results go way up. So number 5, I told you this is going to be meaty, so hopefully you're writing some things down. Keeping and growing your employees, because you just spent a lot of time, energy, and effort and money getting them in your organization. How are you going to keep them and grow them? So onboarding and training is the key focus for this section. Nearly 50% of employees fail within 18 months. Startling statistic, I know. However, there's good news, people. New hires are 58% more likely to stay when they complete a structured onboarding process. So be honest with yourself. How many people have an onboarding process beyond, here's your phone, here's your desk, here's my extension, see you later? Not many do. Sometimes somebody gets taken to lunch. Sometimes people have, a 1-week onboarding process. That's a start. But best practices are really focused on 6-month welcoming programs. I always think about this word onboarding, and it makes me giggle a little bit because it sounds like a medical procedure. And I don't know about you, but I think I'd rather be welcomed into an organization than onboarded. It sounds terrible, actually. So think of a strategy to bring people into your company, and how do you want them to experience the first couple days, first couple moments, the first 6 months of their journey with your brand? There's so many people in your organization who can inform this. People who've been great on your team for a long time with great tenure. People who are newest into your organization. Your human resources people who you're going to try to make sure you get them more strategies and resources. Your sales people because they know what's being said out there. Your marketing people because they know what the message is. So reflect with each other and support your culture and values, because that's what onboarding is all about. Here's some best practices for you. Day one and ongoing. Before the start date, it would be great if the owner of the company, or the CEO, the leader of the organization, sent a note welcoming people to the organization, maybe with his or her favorite business book. Make sure that you put yourself in the new employee's shoes. Just a personal story, my son started school in, August, and I get up at 5:30 in the morning. I made him chocolate chip pancakes, bacon, made sure he had juice, had a good lunch for the day, and that was just starting junior year in high school. So what are you doing to make this first couple of days, weeks, months really focused on the success of the individual you just invested in? Because it's not just that person's responsibility, it's yours too. So first day, make sure you don't just shove them in a cube and say, good luck, see you later. Don't put them in a situation where they're filling out pages and pages of, I-9s and, other employment paperwork. That's just, make sure you have systems for that so they can do that before their first day. And we have products and systems to help enable you do that. Make sure there's a mentor program in your organization. And I don't mean their manager. I mean someone in the organization who is not their manager, who can help them on their journey to success, right? Be flexible. We all have buyer's remorse when we buy a new car, right? We talk about that. But we forget to realize that after you hire somebody, you're like, oh boy, I hope they work out. And if you're being honest with yourself, you think about that a lot. We just brought somebody on over 40 days ago, and you have to be careful not to overwhelm new people and constantly check in on the information, what are the unwritten rules, what are you hearing. Make sure you introduce them to the key employees in the company. And please make sure your owners are very involved, your owners or your leaders or whatever you call them, that they're involved, because people want access to leadership. New people really choose a company not just because of the job they're going to do. They choose a company to work with because of what they're going to learn and how it's going to position them for the rest of their future, especially your newer employees. So make sure that you have key people involved. And training and development, I can't overemphasize enough. It's, if we can't find the people with the right skills, which we all agreed earlier in the conversation we can't, it's very hard out there, then what are you going to do to train them? Because if they've got the right cultural alignment, they've got the right values, they've got the great an attitude, train them up. Make sure people can do their job effectively, increases efficiencies. These are some key takeaways and business outcomes. It improves customer relations because they're learning a new skill. You can cross-train between departments so you don't become dependent on people. You don't want to create a structure where you're, too dependent on people. And it really helps you maintain a competitive environment because people do want to learn new skills. And it is incumbent upon us as employers to teach so people can grow. I have had many people, especially in manufacturing and construction, say, Well, great. I spent all this time, energy, effort, and money training them, and then they move. You know, especially the more emerging younger generations. Well, they are going to move. That's just the way, unfortunately, it's a fact of where we are in our world today. People who are in the emerging generations will, on average, move jobs every 2 to 3 years. It's not because they don't like you, it's because they want to grow. So if you're developing training and development techniques that can engage them, and they're constantly learning, you're gonna widen that gap a little bit more. Maybe they'll stay 3-4 years, right? But we talked about recruitment as a sales process. So if you have recruitment as a sales process on board, you're not going to worry as much that people are going to leave. See how this is all interrelated together? It's all dependent on each other. So training and development, and also make sure that you focus on culture. Culture is king. My great friend Gustavo Gramatsky is a speaker, and he wrote a book called Culture Trumps Everything, and I absolutely adore him and his content. And he's right. You can't overlook culture. If we all agree that marketing sets the table for sales, I'm here to tell you that culture sets the table for everything that we talked about today. It sets the table for finding, keeping, and growing great people, because if you've got a great culture that's aligned with your values and you know who you are, you're going to have a great employment brand. You're going to have a great recruitment process. You're going to have a wonderful, successful referral program. So culture has become very sexy, and it's the most utilized business word out there right now, but nobody knows really what to do with it. And creating culture that's purposeful and by design, not default, begins with understanding where you are, right? Culture is hard work. It's hard to quantify, but it is something you can measure. I assure you, you can measure culture, and we have many tools that we use, the Q12, Net Promoter Score, and other tools to measure where culture is and make sure that the people in your organizations have meaningful experiences at work. Culture is a combination of your values, traditions, beliefs, and interactions, your behaviors, your attitudes. That's what culture is all about. And if you want to dig into culture, I have another Fridays with Vistage webinar called Culture by Design, Not by Default. So you can look that up and get deeper into culture, because it's foundational to everything I talked about today. So next steps for you. Before we get into Q&A, I wanted to just summarize everything we just talked about. Middle market companies are constantly changing. We're evolving and we're overcoming our challenges. There's really great tools that I talked to you about today that take courage to implement, a solid process, a strategic mindset when it comes to your people. And I did write a book called Solve the People Puzzle, which you can access as well. And we're going to send you today, if you text 44222 and type the word People Puzzle with no space. So text 44222, type in People Puzzle, no space. We will send to you today the full report from the National Center for Middle Market, which I'm so excited about, and the PowerPoint that we used today, and links to 3 of our Vistage webinars, Culture by Design, Recruiting as a Sales Process, and how to leverage your employment brand to go deeper into some of the things we discussed. So I'm going to hand it back over to Bill. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining. I love our Vistage community, and I'm here to help you any way you need me.
Kathleen, great job. We have several questions. Are you ready for the first one?
I'm ready.
Okay. With Profile XT that you mentioned, is this based on someone's hardwiring, or can the measurements change?
Well, it's really, most of the selection tools are based on hardwiring. We all become kind of who we are by the age of 5. You know, we spend a lot of time with our families, and we're pretty hardwired in our attitudes and our beliefs, and how we answer these questions tends to be the way we'll show up under stress, right? Now, Bill, I'll tell you that people can adapt themselves. So remember my example I used of myself that I moved Mach 2 with my hair on fire? That when I'm under stress, forget it. You better just get out of the way because I'm going to move. But when I'm not under stress, I can adapt and I can go, okay, I'm talking to someone who's really a little less hardwired as far as pace is concerned, and I can slow my roll when I'm not under stress. So I hope that's helpful in the answer.
Very much so. So here's another question we had, Kathleen. What are some of the unique insights geared towards recruiting engineering talent in such a low supply, high demand environment?
Yes, we have many engineering clients because they're all experience the same shortage because they don't have the processes and systems in place. So specifically, the areas that I talked about that can inform you and the webinars that I have that go deeper are as recruitment as a sales process. And in your world, your engineering world, you have to engage the people you want to talk to. They are not going to just form a line outside your door. So it becomes a marketing collaboration with human resources to get those people engaged with who you are, who your brand is, why you are who you are, and why would they ever want to consider working for you. So it's going to take your two things. One, develop a process and system around engaging the right people and filling the pipeline with the people you need to talk to. So it's going to take research and marketing.
Makes perfect sense. So here's another question we just got. What is your suggested response when a CEO says, we don't need to worry about our culture. We've been doing this successfully for 15 years. Who cares about that stuff?
Well, I get that a lot. I love that question. I'm a member of the Association for Corporate Growth, and I hang out sometimes with private equity and investment banking friends who think everything that I do is soft and fluffy. So it's really nice to get that kind of feedback from a business colleague. But if you don't have your people, you don't have anything. And unfortunately for that CEO, we are going into a more constrictive environment, and he or she needs to be ahead of this because they're not going to be able to get the talent they need to execute on their vision. And so culture, we worked with a painting company who also, they're no longer a customer because they don't care about culture either. But I would suggest that a first good step is do an unofficial little survey and show it to your CEO that the culture isn't where he or she thinks it is. Because culture is about what the employees are saying and doing with each other, your customers, your vendors every day. It's not what the CEO thinks it is. I'm sorry to tell him or her, but they're probably wrong, and they're going to get surprised when they actually start listening to their employees, what they want, how they want to, how they want to work with the company. And there's also alignment, Bill, between what does an employee group want and what is the values of the owner. I'm not suggesting for a minute that we surrender everything we want as business owners to our employees. I get that question a lot. But at least asking the question, you know how aligned you are with your values, your attitudes and beliefs as a private business owner with those of your employees, and how do you close that gap just enough to have really good values and culture conversations and environments.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. This question goes back to what we were talking about with recruiting engineering talent. And the question is, do you use this same process to hire salespeople?
Oh, yeah. This is awesome with salespeople. Awesome with salespeople. It's awesome with any function. And salespeople are extremely hard to find. I mean, well, let me reiterate that. Salespeople are good, are easy to find, but the ones who can generate $1 are very hard to find.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah.
People masquerade, Bill, as salespeople. They think they're salespeople, but if they can't generate $1, they're not salespeople.
Yeah, there are closers and posers. That's for sure.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Well said.
So Kathleen, if you have work in consulting services, this listener wanted to know, how do you find the best candidate for very competitive positions?
Well, professional services and consulting services is a very fast-growing sector, and again, I really encourage the consulting services firm to put some of these practices in place. The competitive positions, you have to pull in that 70% that's never going to apply to an advertisement, right? Because, I mean, companies need a lot of advice right now, and professional services and consulting services are growing. So you have to start a dialogue with the people you want to work for you versus waiting for them to come to you, because the good ones are employed.
Right. Good point. So let's talk about where this fits. Where should the actual function of talent acquisition live within an organization?
Well, this is an unpopular answer usually, but I'll give it to you anyhow. It should really live with the C-suite. It should live with the owner and the president of the company. It should be that important right now, and it can be supported by marketing. Because if you listened carefully to the conversation, a lot of this is marketing, messaging, positioning, branding, right? And it should also work in concert with the human resources function. But I can't stress enough that they are overtaxed. And so I believe it belongs with the owner and the CEO, because it's so important, and it's just going to get harder. I apologize, but it's just going to get harder.
What's the relevance and importance of new and emerging sites like Glassdoor?
Well, you have to, you have to go out there and be informed, right? We live in a world of complete transparency where everybody can get information in just 2 seconds, right? I mean, if I want to Google you, I'm going to get a lot of information, and I'm not going to have any feedback as to whether it's accurate or not, right? We're talking a lot about fake news right now. People consume things and they think it's reality, but it's not. So Glassdoor is just like a Yelp or a Google or, TripAdvisor. It has become a place where disgruntled people go who are employees to talk about their companies. So if you have a Glassdoor reputation, I recommend that you become part of the conversation. Again, don't just let it happen to you. And people are going to leave your organization, and they're going to be mad, and they're going to put things out there. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. But you've got to be part of the conversation, and this is where your marketing people come in. They can help you craft messages as to how to respond to disgruntled people, So you have to own those sites. You have to be aware of them. You have to be aware of your social media presence out there. What are people looking at? What does it say about your leadership? So there's a lot of research that has to go into what is the perception of your brand now, and what do you want it to be? So it's a marketing, research, human resources type of world out there.
Great. And you mentioned the Net Promoter Score, and this question is, how often should we go back out to customers to try to develop our Net Promoter Score?
Well, I was suggesting using the Net Promoter Score internally with your employees. So I suggest if you're going to use it internally with your employees, it's a minimum every 6 months, if not every 90 days, because, anything can happen in a 90-day period, right? And for your customers, if you do Net Promoter only once a year, I mean, there's so many things that happen with a customer connection throughout a 12-month cycle. It's only one question, and usually people don't get fatigued answering one question. So I would say at minimum quarterly. if you're going to do external customers. But just to clarify, Bill, I was suggesting the Net Promoter Score be used as an internal measurement of your employees' engagement, whether they're promoters or detractors.
Excellent. Okay. Looks like a last question. If you have any questions, please let us know. We have time for about one more question after this. But what's the first step in increasing your brand awareness and leveraging your employment brand?
The first step is understanding where is your employment brand now. So any good program needs to understand where you are now. So get your marketing people, sales people, HR people, and a C-level champion involved. Get together for a brainstorming session, research where your brand is today, and then bring into the conversation people who just chose your organization, like in the last 90 days, and those people who've been with you for a long time. Stop making assumptions that you know what your brand is. Start asking people what your brand really is. That's step one.
Kathleen, a wonderful job once again today. Very, very much appreciate you helping us to understand this topic, and you did a terrific job. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bill. Pleasure to work with you as always.
Thank you. And listeners, I want you to pull out your calendar and a red pen and circle the date of November 17th at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, where we will have a webinar with Joe Galvin, the Chief Research Officer for Vistage, and he's going to share compelling research on customer growth strategies implemented by SMB CEOs, as well as the resources, including systems and technology, that they leverage to achieve their goals. So again, that's Friday, November 17th at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss it. Join us for that. We want to thank you once again for joining us on Fridays with Vistage. And on behalf of Vistage Worldwide, my name is Bill Black, wishing you continued success. And this concludes today's webinar.